Good morning, everyone. Just reply in the chat box. Am I audible? Is the screen visible? And join quickly so we can start. Good morning, students. Reply in the chat box. Is the screen visible to you all? Sorry. Good. So, so here we start with it. Already we have seen the story set in the place called Sussex and Kent. So there is a long road between these two places, and there is a forest as well called Old Hammer Woods, where there used to be iron industry as well as there was Hammer Pond. And through this thickness of the wood, the road passes to the Mrs. Addie's cottage. And that night, the writer mentions it was no twilight, no moon, only a few pricks of fire, that is, only few stars were there in the sky. And the darkness revealed what the darkness hid and the silence revealed it. In this absolute stillness of the night, windless of the night, clear and every sound was distinct to it, as well as the far away barking of the dog could be heard as if he is very close at hand. And at this night, the man was walking, and his footsteps he could hear, and they were like a knell for him. Now, why is he walking there, and why is he taking effort to walk more quietly? As there were thorns on the roadside, and the crackling and rustling of the sound, his feet were on the road. Besides, he made to go slowly, but he had no time for that. So, why is he going slowly and why is he so hurriedly? Let's see all this in today's lecture. So, join quickly. Now, we are going to start with it. I'll take the present letter, so do not reply me with your names at present. Just focus on the sentences, phrases, and the words that we'll see today. The first paragraph says, when the man came to Mrs. Addie's cottage, he paused a moment. Cottage means a house. So when that man came to the Mrs. Addie's cottage, he stopped there for a moment. He took a pause, a little stop, a short pause, halt. And he stood there, and there was a gap of small patch of grass between the house and the road. And from there, the man looked in. Looked in means peeped in. He looked in at the lighted, uncurtained window, and he could see the window, and in the house there is a lighting, the brightness, and the window is uncurtained. means curtains are kept aside, so he could see easily what is going on in the house. So the man could see Mrs. Addis. Reply in the chat box what Mrs. Addis was doing. What was Mrs. Addis doing? Good morning, everyone. Now, quickly reply in the chat box as the man could see Mrs. Addis. What was Mrs. Addis doing there? Waiting for your answers. I see answers from you now. Noor has replied. Hetvi has replied. Krisha has replied. See the meaning of stooping here. Stooping means bending over something. You bend for some reason, as if to reach some place. So you can see the example there. Now you use this word in your own sentence. She stooped down and picked the coin. Reply in the chat box with your answers, with your sentence. Use the word. You can see answers from Vishal. Use the word in your own sentence and reply. Aditya has replied. Hetvi has replied. You have to use this word in your own sentence and reply in the chat box. I see answer from Jeet, then Gayatri or Lalchan. Jadeja has also replied. Devang has also replied. So the Mrs. Addis, she was bending over the fire and taking some pot or kettle of it. You all know the kettle, the tea kettle. So she took it off from the fire, and the man, he hesitated and seemed to wonder. What does hesitated mean? It means unwilling, not ready to do something or to say something. As here you see the sentence, she hesitated to dance on the floor. You can use this word in your own sentence and again reply in the chat box. Meanwhile, I'll continue with it. The man seemed wonder. Wonder means surprise. He might be thinking what to do now. He's a little bit confused. And here you can see the description of that man as well. The man was big, heavy working man. So you can say he's a worker. But as well as the writer gives us information that the man was not successful. And the author says it could be judged by the poverty of his appearance. The man was not successful, he was poor. This could be judged by his appearance, the writer says. Poverty means the poor condition. So the man was poor, he was worker as well as not successful. For a moment, he made as if he would open the window, then he changed his mind. Now, for what reason anybody would open the window of other person's home or cottage? But then he changed his mind and he went to the door instead. So he might be want to enter the house from the window without knowing that owner of the house. Then he thought better to go from the door. So it shows that the man is little bit confused. He is not able to decide what to do and what not. So when someone is in trouble, that time this situation occurs. Now what happened? He went to the door. He did not knock but walked straight in. He's supposed to knock over there, then only he should go inside the house. But he did not knock the door and went straight in the house. I can see answers here, sentences from you all. Devang, Man, Jeet, Neil, Etvi, Aditya, Bhakti, Krisha, Anjali, and many other. So when he went straight in the house, in the cottage, the woman at the fire, she turned quickly round. She might have uh, felt that somebody is entering the house. So she turned quickly. And what she says? What? You, Peter Crouch? She said, I did not hear you knock. Now, these simple dialogues help us to understand the relation of the characters, Mrs. Edis and the man. Here we come to know about the name of the man. The name of the man. His name is Peter Crouch. And Mrs. Edis said Peter Crouch. It means she knew him very well. And she said she did not hear Peter Crouch knock. It means she trusts him that Peter Crouch enters the house with knocking on the door. And she is not blaming that you did not knock the door. She blames herself that she has not heard the knock on the door. So that much trust she had over Peter Crouch. Peter Crouch, here he could have lied. He could have given some falsehood, untruth. But he honestly confessed himself. He says, I did not knock, ma'am. Means he also trusts her and honestly speak with her. He told, I did not knock, ma'am. I didn't want anybody to hear. As well as he gives a reason why he didn't knock. Because he trusts her and to gain her trust or as well as to show their relation is strong, he tells everything. He says he did not knock the door because he did not want anybody to hear that he has come over there. Now, why does he want to do that? How is that? Mrs. Addis is asking the same question. How is that? How you are doing this? Why you want to hide this? Why you don't want anybody to hear? So here he mentions for the first time he is in trouble. He is in problem and that's why he did not knock the door. And here he says, with hands was shaking a little. When he said, I am in trouble, I am in problem, I am in difficulty, while he was saying, his hands were shaking. It means he was shivering due to the fear, due to the some nervousness. Now, he might have done something wrong, or something wrong might have happened with him. So Mrs. Addis directly asked him, what have you done? So he says, I shot a man, Mrs. Addis. So here Peter Crouch very honestly, very in a very simple manner, he says what he has done. He has shot a man. Understood up to this? Any doubt, any question? If you have any question, you can ask in the chat box. I'm not taking the presentee. If you have written your name in the chat box, it will not be considered for the attendance. Please understand it. Now we will see the dialogues which are going between the Mrs. Addis and Peter Crouch. Where does it lead? What it unfolds now? So Mrs. Addis says, you means she is not sure, she can't believe that Peter Crouch had shot someone. Yes, shot. So Peter Crouch says, yes, I shot him. She is still not believing. So she asked Peter Crouch, you killed him? Did you kill someone? So Peter Crouch says, I don't know whether I killed someone or not, but I shot a man. So for a moment there was silence in the small stuffy kitchen. So in the kitchen there was complete silence. The dialogue which were going between these two characters, now they are paused and they can feel that silence in that small and stuffy kitchen. Stuffy means in a very small place, can have many things, many kitchen utensils and all things are kept at one place. Then the kettle boiled over and Mrs. Addis mechanically put it at this side of the fire. So there was silence. They were thinking what to do, what not to do. And then the kettle boiled, and that boiling made Mrs. Addis to put that kettle side of the fire. And she did it mechanically. Mechanically means practically. Sometimes we have some thoughts in our mind, and as well as we do some other works with our hands. And that happens practically with the experienced hand, we do that. She was, now here you will find a description of the Mrs. Addis. It says she was a small, thin woman with a brown. I mean, she was not so fair with the color complexion. She had a hard face, and on the face, the skin had dried up with innumerable small hair like wrinkles. And on the face, there were many wrinkles were there, lines were there, which shows the sign of age or old age, you can say. But she was probably not more than 42 years. So she was middle-aged woman, but her face, her poor condition makes us feel that she is very old woman. Why it happens? Because life treats some women hard in the agricultural districts of Sussex. So here the writer gives us the life of the women in this particular area and adds one more line here with saying Mrs. Addis' life had been harder than most. So this could be her face. We don't know exactly how she was looking, but here you can see the wrinkles on the face and understand how difficult the life would be of a person living in agricultural district. Okay. I repeat again, if you type your name right now, it will not be considered for the present tense. So do not do that. If I ask any question, better answer those questions. So after the silence, Mrs. Addis asked Peter Crouch. So Peter Crouch, what do you want me to do for you now? Tell me, what can I do for you? How can I assist you? And she said this with a little sour. Sorely means here unpleasantly, unfriendly way. Use this word sorely in your own sentence and reply in the chat box. So after hearing that the man had shot someone and he has come to her place, he might be want some help. So she didn't hesitate to help him. Instead, she said, "Okay, I'm ready to help you. Just let me know what can I do for you." So she's asking him what favor does he want from her. So meanwhile, you reply in the chat box. Use the word solely in the sentence and reply. He has come there for some help, and the old woman is ready to help him. Mrs. Addis wants to help him, but what kind of help? What sort of thing the man wants from her is not clear. So that's why she says, "Just let me know, what can I do for you?" Reply in the chat box, use the word sorely. I see the sentences now. Krisha has replied. Reshma has replied. So reply in the chat box. Meanwhile, I'll continue with next. So Peter Crouch, he says, "Let me stay here a bit. Is there nowhere you can put me till they have gone?" So Peter Crouch here, he wants Mrs. Addis to let him stay in that place for some time, for a while. And he is asking her, "Is there any place where you can put me till they have gone?" Now here, who have gone? For whom they is referred here? That's the question. We'll see that answer as well. Here I see the reply from Krisha, Reshma and Hetvi as well as Jeet. See the next here. This would be the last slide. See answer from Bhakti and Nikita as well. So Mrs. Addis is asking Peter Crouch who is there. So he says the keepers. The keepers means the gamekeepers. Oh, you have had a quarrel with the keepers, have you? So Mrs. Addis is assuming that the Peter Crouch might have had a quarrel with the keepers and that's why he wants to hide from them. It might be also mean that he most of the time has quarrel with them. Am I audible to you? Am I audible to you all now? Just reply. Am I audible now? Can you hear me? Okay, so let's continue from here. So she assumed that he had a quarrel with the keepers. So he says, yes, what happened there? He is giving the complete idea about it, complete information about that incident. So he says he was there down by Cinderwood. It's the name of a wood forest. And he was there to pick something, means he was there for poaching, for hunting. He wanted to hunt some animal for his meal, and poaching was illegal there. So the keepers who were there, they found him. And the keepers, they had some certain area to supervise, to manage it, and they don't allow anyone do poaching there. So the keepers found the Peter Crouch, and his keepers were four. That's why he says there were 4 to 1. So he was all alone, and there were four keepers. So they had a quarrel, and in that quarrel, he used his gun and he shot someone. Whom has he shot? We don't know. Then I ran for it. They are after me. They can't be far off now. And these people are after him. They might be not far from him, and that's why he wants to hide himself, or he wants to keep himself away from those people. He says, Mrs. Addis, she did not speak for a moment, and Crouch looked at her beseechingly. Crouch means Peter Crouch. Now, this is a wonderful word, beseechingly. Beseechingly means appealingly, as if you are requesting someone, very humble request, you can say. Here you can see the example as well. The son looked at his father beseechingly for some toys. Then Peter Krause says, you might do it for Tom's sake. Now, here you see another name of the character, and the name is Tom. Now, who is Tom here? And he says to Mrs. Addis that do this, help me for Tom's sake. Now, who is Tom? So, here we get some idea. You haven't been an over good friend to Tom, snapped Mrs. Addis. Snapped means say something quickly. So Mrs. Addis said, you have never been a good friend to Tom. Why do you want me to help you for Tom's sake? So Peter says, but Tom has been a very good friend to me. I know I was not good friend to Tom, but Tom was very good friend to me. Means Peter Crouch might have not helped as much as Tom has helped him. And he adds one more line there. He says, he would want you to stand by me tonight. Tom would want Mrs. Addis to stand by me tonight. So here you need to understand Tom is the son of Mrs. Addis. And Tom is very good friend to Peter Crouch. But Peter Crouch hardly helps him. So taking his name, he is asking Mrs. Addis to help him and stand by him for that night. So Mrs. Addis says, well, I won't say he wouldn't, for Tom always thought better of you than you deserved. And she snapped him again by saying, okay, I'll help you. I won't say anything, as I know Tom is always helping you more than you deserved, better than you deserved. So maybe you can stay here till he comes home tonight. So Mrs. Addis is ready to help Peter Crouch and he is asking Peter Crouch to stay here till Tom comes home tonight. So it's a promise. And then what he can hear, we can hear what he says about it. Then let Tom decide whatever he has to decide. So Peter Crouch says he will be up at work for an hour yet, and the coast will be clear by then. I can get away out of the country. So Peter Crouch says that he will be at work for one more hour. After that, he will come home, and in that time, the coast will be clear. Means his road will be clear. He will go from there, and he says he can get away out of the country. Means he is trying to go away from that place. He will run away from that place. So Mrs. Addis is asking, where will you go? Now, where will he go? Do we all know? We don't know. What Tom will say when he comes home that night, whether before Tom comes, will the keepers will catch him. For these answers, you have to wait for one day. Remaining part we'll see in next lecture. Now it's 11:22. Reply your name in the chat box for the presenting. I'm giving you 5 minutes. In the 5 minutes you have to reply your name for the attendance. Those who reply their name, their attendance will be count. So reply your name in the chat box for attendance. And if you have any other doubts, you can ask in the chat box. And after replying in the chat box, you can leave the class. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. Hello.